Oh, Gemini Diz. My name is Carol. I am 69 years old. I want to talk about the silence. Not the peaceful kind of silence you see in those retirement commercials with the sailboats and the matching sweaters. I mean the heavy kind. The kind of silence that settles into your living room on a Tuesday morning when you realize you have absolutely nowhere to be. When I finally retired a few years ago, I thought I was completely ready. I had my teaching pension lined up from the school district. I had my Social Security survivor benefits all figured out. We had a paid-off house. On paper, the fixed income math worked perfectly. But nobody tells you about the physical shock of stopping. You spend 40 years running on a tight schedule. You have the alarm clock ringing in the dark. You have the morning commute. You have the staff meetings. And then one morning you just stop. The rest of the world keeps moving, but you are not moving with it. I remember sitting right here in this chair during my second week. It was Frank's chair before it became my filming chair. I had my cup of tea in my hand. I switched to tea after Frank died because the smell of coffee just reminded me too much of his morning routine. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 9:15 in the morning, and I realized I had absolutely nothing to do for the next 14 hours. That was a terrifying moment for me. I thought I had made a terrible mistake. I thought I was failing at this whole thing. You wake up and the calendar is completely empty, and that feels strange. Not good weird, just weird. You start wandering from the kitchen to the living room and back again. You open the refrigerator and look inside like a carton of milk is going to give you a sense of purpose. You wonder if this is all there is now. Just making tea, watching the morning news, and waiting for the mail truck to arrive. It is a very specific kind of drifting. I felt it hard. I felt like I was losing my edge. I felt like I was shrinking into just another older woman in a quiet house. I am not going to give you a 5-step system to fix that. I don't have all the answers. I am just going to tell you what happened during those first 3 months. I will tell you what I got wrong, and I will tell you what I eventually figured out. Let me take you back to that first Monday. I retired exactly when Frank and I had planned. He was a civil engineer for the county. He was supposed to go first in January of 2019, and I was going to follow in 2021. We had a whole plan. He retired, and we had 6 really good months. Then he passed away in October of 2019. It was a sudden cardiac event while he was mowing the lawn. I went back to work after that, not because I had to financially, but because I needed somewhere to be. I needed the school bell to tell me what to do. The curriculum meetings became a lifeline for me, but when March 2021 came around, I kept the original date. I packed up my classroom at Lincoln Elementary. I brought home my cardboard boxes. It felt like keeping a promise to him, even though the promise was to us. I woke up that first Monday without setting an alarm. I laid in bed and listened to the neighborhood wake up around me. I heard the school buses groaning down the street. For 35 years, that sound meant I was already late. Now it meant absolutely nothing to my day. I got up and made my tea. I sat at the kitchen table, and I felt entirely unanchored. The massive relief I expected just was not there. There was just a massive, echoing blank space. That is when the reality actually hit me. So I want to go through 5 things I noticed in those first 90 days. Things nobody puts in the retirement brochure. Things I wish someone had warned me about before I handed in my keys for the last time. The first thing I noticed was the complete collapse of my daily routine. When you work, your day has scaffolding built right into it. You have a lunch hour. You have an end-of-day commute. You have a weekend to look forward to. Your body actually keeps time based on those obligations. In retirement, a Wednesday feels exactly like a Saturday. At first, I thought this was the freedom everyone talked about. I stayed in my pajamas until noon. I read a book on the couch. But by day 12, the lack of structure started making me deeply anxious. I found myself cleaning things that did not need to be cleaned. I scrubbed the baseboards in the guest bedroom twice in 1 week. I took all the crisper drawers out of the refrigerator and washed them in the sink. I reorganized my spice rack alphabetically. I am not an alphabetical spice rack kind of person. I stood in the kitchen holding a jar of paprika and realized I was losing my mind. Frank would have had an opinion about this. He would have laughed at me. He was the planner. I was the talker. When he retired, he immediately built a schedule. He took morning walks and worked on projects in the garage. I had to learn to build my own scaffolding. I had to create a reason to get dressed. I started forcing myself to leave the house by 10 every morning, even if it was just to go to the post office to buy stamps. You have to manufacture your own momentum. Nobody is going to do it for you anymore. That was a hard lesson for me to learn alone. The second thing was the physical reality of the money hitting the bank account. I want to be honest with you about the numbers because I think vague is not helpful. During those first few weeks, I got my first combined deposit. It was my teaching pension and my Social Security survivor benefit. It came out to exactly $3,130. Now, Frank kept immaculate spreadsheets. When he died, I inherited those spreadsheets. I went in and changed the header to say, Carol's numbers. But seeing that actual deposit for the first time was sobering. We had planned for 2 incomes in retirement. Now it was just mine. The math was different. The new math, I call it. Even with a paid-off mortgage, I found myself terrified to spend a dime. Frank had the foresight to pay off the house in 2018. I am grateful for that every single month. But my spreadsheet showed my property tax and insurance at $310. My groceries were budgeted at $280. I tracked every single grocery receipt like my life depended on it. I agonized over a slightly higher electric bill. I felt this intense pressure that if I messed up, there was no backup plan. I was the only safety net. I tracked my Medicare supplement premium of $187. I watched the numbers constantly. It took me a solid 2 months to trust the spreadsheet, to realize that the $800 I was putting into savings was real. I had more than enough. I didn't need to panic. I just needed to adjust. The financial shock isn't always about not having enough. Sometimes it's just the shock of it being different than you pictured. And managing that alone is a heavy thing in the beginning. The third thing I noticed was how other people treated my time, specifically my daughter Jen. I love Jen completely. She lives up in Charlotte, which is about 90 minutes away from me. She is a marketing director at a healthcare company. She is very efficient and protective. She is a problem solver. When Frank died, she organized everything: the funeral, the paperwork, the meals. But the week after I retired, she started calling me at 10 in the morning on a Tuesday. She would ask me to drive up to Charlotte to let the plumber into her house because she had a meeting. Or she would ask me to pick up my granddaughter Ella from an appointment. In her mind, I was retired, which meant I was available. I was just sitting around waiting to be helpful. And because I felt guilty about not having a schedule, I said yes. I spent my first 3 weeks of retirement acting as an unpaid personal assistant. I was driving all over the interstate. I was exhausted. One afternoon, my son David called from Portland. He is a landscape architect. He calls every Sunday without fail. It was Frank's habit, and David just kept it going. He asked how my week was. I told him I was exhausted from running Jen's errands. He just listened. He is softer than Jen. He is more comfortable sitting in difficult feelings. He was the one who told me I was allowed to be busy, even if busy just meant reading a book in my chair. That is when I figured out I had to set boundaries. You have to train your family on how to treat your time. If you don't value your Tuesday morning, they won't value it either. You have to protect your quiet hours. The fourth thing is the social deficit. I didn't fully understand why, but I felt incredibly isolated by month 2. As a curriculum coordinator and a teacher, I talked to dozens of people a day. Other teachers in the break room, administrators, parents. I didn't realize how much casual social interaction I was getting just by showing up to a building. When you retire alone, that vanishes entirely. If you don't make an effort, you can go 3 days without speaking out loud to another human being. I caught myself having full conversations with the television newscasters. My older sister Patty lives in Indianapolis. She is widowed too. Her husband died 8 years ago. We talk on the phone every Thursday. She is my advanced scout for this kind of thing. I called her and told her I felt like I was disappearing. She told me I had to treat socializing like a part-time job. It felt incredibly awkward. Making friends when you are almost 70 is harder than it sounds. You feel like the new kid in the elementary school cafeteria, but you have to do it. You have to join the church committee you don't really want to join. You have to put yourself in the path of other people. Work friends are often just a convenience. When you lose the convenience, you have to build something deliberate. I had to learn how to walk into a room where I didn't know anyone and introduce myself. It is exhausting at first. The isolation will creep up on you if you let it. You have to actively fight it during those first 90 days. The fifth thing, and this is the hardest one, when the noise of your career stops, the quiet of your house gets much louder. The first 90 days of retirement were when I really felt Frank's absence in a new way. When I was working, I was distracted. I was dealing with school politics and lesson plans. Retirement stripped all that daily distraction away. Suddenly, it was just me and the quiet house, especially in the evenings. The 5 o'clock hour used to be when we transitioned from work to home. I'd sit down to watch the evening news, and the empty space next to me felt enormous. I had to face the fact that the retirement we planned was gone. I was doing this alone. I am not saying it to be sad or heavy. It is just the truth. I had to grieve the retirement we were supposed to have, so I could start living the one I actually had. I have this notebook. I call it the book. I keep it right here on the table. I wrote down the list of national parks Frank wanted to see. We had a whole spreadsheet for it. I looked at that list a lot during those first few months. I realized I was allowed to be angry that the plan changed. It is okay to be frustrated. But I was also allowed to build something new. You have to sit in the quiet for a while before you can figure out what comes next. You can't rush that part. You just have to sit in the chair and let the house be quiet. I am not going to tell you it was easy. Those first 90 days were incredibly messy. Some days are better than others. Yesterday was a better one. I made a lot of mistakes. I spent too much time worrying about the water bill. I scrubbed too many baseboards. But eventually, the dust settles. You figure out your new rhythms. You learn how to be the only person in the house without feeling lonely all the time. It is a process. 2 years later, I am genuinely okay. More than okay sometimes. I am building what is mine now. It just took me a while to understand that was allowed. If you are in those first few months of retirement, or if you are getting close, leave a comment. Tell me what surprised you the most. Specifically, what is the one thing about your daily routine that caught you off guard when you stopped working? I read all of them. They remind me I'm not the only one figuring this out. And if you want to talk more about this side of retirement, stick around. That is what we do here. Okay, I think that's what I wanted to say. Thanks for being here.